Welcome to the podcast that guides men to demystify and develop their intuition. I'm your host, Doug Bites. Let's dig into the science and expand your horizons.
So today's guest is Taylor Cecil. I'm going to digress a little from his traditional bio and give you my impressions of who he is. As a teenager, Taylor started competing on the world triathlon circuit, eventually though suffering chronic fatigue. Fortunately, he found great meaning in that through a powerful mentor. He studied the body, mind and spirit extensively and decided to offer his knowledge to athletes and non-athletes alike, and has coached well-known world champions. He's wise beyond his years, and I would call him an old soul. Very recently, he's become an entrepreneur, opening an upmarket wellness sanctuary, which I'm looking forward to hearing about, having opened a scuba dive resort myself around his age. Taylor, welcome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks, mate.
Good. All right, so I'm going to start. Usually you start at the beginning of your story. I want to start at the end. Tell us about your venture into entrepreneurship with Native State.
Yes. So as we sit here today, Native State has been open for 2 weeks. So, but, open for 2 weeks, but the journey towards opening has been some time.
Yeah.
About 3.5 to 4 years to be exact. And the journey into opening the space has just been an offering, an expression of not only my value, but, everyone that's in that space. And, it's just, as I sit here right now, I'm just in such gratitude, awe and excitement because it's been an incredible 2 weeks so far.
Yes. So you're saying it took 3 or 4 years to put together. Was that longer than you thought?
It was, yeah. I mean, originally we had planned to open in March 2020. So
that's a date that seems to ring in history.
It does, yeah. And obviously that didn't plan out. And but so much more has come and evolved over this time, whether it's people that have entered and put their magic dust on it, or just the timing of now and how necessary I feel it's been to open a space like this this year. So yeah, it's been about 3.5 years, but the vision has been in my mind for a very long time, to have a space that's a training space and where we spend our energy, and then a bathhouse space where we rejuvenate and build our energy. Yeah. I've always envisioned wanting to open something like that and have it offered to the local community and where I grew up as well. Yeah.
And I haven't been there, but I've looked on the website. It talks about in the bathhouse, you've got a meditation area as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of up my alley. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So in the bathhouse, we have an infrared sauna. We've got a meditation lounge, a traditional sauna. We have a steam room. We have a cold bucket, a heated vitality pool, magnesium, and then also a cold plunge at 8 degrees.
I was going to ask you how cold the cold is. 8. That's pretty chilly.
We sit it at 8 because we also want that to be inviting for people. We don't want to try and max it out and get it as close to 0 as possible. A lot of the science speaks to under 12 degrees.
Yes.
And to have it at that temperature can still invite those that maybe haven't done the cold before, or it's new to them and they're wondering if they can do it or last. So 8's been a good number for everybody.
And is there any sort of timing device there? Do you suggest people stay in there for a certain amount of time? Or?
Yeah, we do. We've come up with 2 different protocols. So we've come up with a yin protocol for people to walk through. So the yin style protocol, it's a little bit more rejuvenating. It's less about kind of testing the functional threshold, which will be the yang that I'll talk about in a second. But it's more around, getting people to walk out feeling more energized and feeling more centered as they go in. So, it's not too long in the cold, around a minute, 30 seconds to a minute if you're on the yin protocol.
Yeah.
And then on the yang, if you're someone who's wanting to test your threshold, then we suggest that you work towards 3 or even 4 minutes, depending on where you're at in your thermoregulation or your cold therapy experiences, basically.
I was sort of getting the giggles because probably about 8 months ago, about a year ago, my wife injured her back, and then about 8 months ago, a couple of different people through synchronicities for her suggested she go along to one of these centres and up at Burleigh, and so we've been going there regularly, and we conquered through the cold and all that sort of thing, because their coldest pool, it says on the sign 5 to 10 degrees, so somewhere around the same range. But now I'm sort of like seasoned at it after all these months. I sort of get the giggles watching the new people come and sort of like hop in or stand up in it, and it's waist deep and not, it's sort of supposed to go up to the neck. But I enjoy watching that side of it.
Amazing. And one of the really unique experiences at Native State is that we also offer bathhouse classes. So for our members, a coach, whether it's myself or Jordan as a breathwork facilitator or Max, we take our members through certain cycles, and we'll sit with them in the traditional sauna, and we'll get out the crystal gua sha, and we'll talk about myofascial release, we'll talk about vagus nerve stimulation, and go through different protocols, and then walk them through some breath work when it comes to stepping into the cold. And then we'll take everyone into the meditation lounge and walk them through a beautiful meditation, and we might cycle through that 2 or 3 times.
Oh, nice. Okay. The meditation before or after the cold plunge?
Oh, it's usually before.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really cool. That's unique. Yeah, excellent. So I'm just curious, with putting the whole project together, what was your biggest learning point up till now?
I'm going to talk more internally around the learning points. I feel like it's anytime I think about goals or speak about them or think about them for myself, to me it also has to be this what I call archetypal process of development. So there's inner and outer goals, and Native State is both. It's an outer goal because it's a grounded third dimensional space that
Something
you can walk
touch
into
and feel.
But it also houses the inner goals of growing my self-esteem and self-confidence, and how I speak about something, and just this inner growth in it all too. So based on your question, it's been this inner growing of how do I manage and maintain many different parts of it, and how do I work with a team. It's not just me that's created this thing. There's such a beautiful team, and how do I interact with them and support their strengths whilst I observe mine, and really co-create and work together. So one of the greatest parts of it and learnings of it has been this new development of co-creating and working with others. That's probably the biggest part.
Because as a coach, you're used to working with people one-on-one or groups, but this is a whole different dynamic now. This is like your clients have been paying you. Now you're paying professional consultants, designers, architects, town planners, or whoever, whatever, talking with plumbers, and they're giving you quotes, and you're going to have to part with your hard-earned cash to, so it's a whole different type of negotiation skill. And
totally. And it's been interesting, my journey to this point, coming from an individual sport such as triathlon and spending most of my day by myself, many hours on the bike or
It's not like a
hours
team
of
sport.
my head in the pool or running on a trail or a track with my headphones in, through to developing into a coach, working in one-on-one relationships, and then developing into a group style and working within a leadership team and having team members and, for me now, facilitating group classes and group offerings. That's been my journey into going one-to-many as well.
Cool.
Which is, just so exciting.
Yeah, I say to my boys, life, it just doesn't really matter what you do as long as you're learning and you're enjoying. One of my sons just started a whole new, he's been working at a place less than a year, but now he's just recently been thrown into the management side of things, and it's just, he's just happy now. Like, he's got so much new learning and everything, and it's just for later on life skills, the different things we learn, it just makes life easier later. Yeah. Because you tick that box, it's like, I can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing.
Excellent. Curious what you were like early in your teenage years, about the time you hit puberty. Like, you're cool, calm and collected now. Were you like that back then?
No. Not at all. I was an incredibly competitive young boy. To me, in those years, in the adolescent stage of life, it's really this journey of discovering self and separating. Still under the roof, but creating my own identity. And during that time, it was, very attached to wanting to be a sporting hero and doing anything possible to do so as well. So, very, very competitive. At that time, I was deep into surf life saving and cross-country running. Early teens, hadn't quite yet hit triathlon, but I was playing a lot of rugby league, and the school I was at, I was there on a rugby union scholarship as well. So very just involved in sport, and that was a big driver.
So you, on the team, you weren't really filling the role of the coach. You were more aggressive. I'm going to be the best. I had to be the best on the field. I had to be the best on the sand and in the water. It was really just a big internal driver for me. I thought that. Okay, so I'm curious if you could go back in time and visit yourself around that age, 13, 14, I'm guessing. That young Taylor, whose hormones were starting to rage, couldn't wait for his muscles to form, hair to grow on his face. I remember that's how I was at that age. What emotions was he going through, and what would you say to him now?
So I would have been I was going through, I remember using frustration and anger as a tool, so my emotional intelligence is in development, but at that point in time, it was using it to drive bigger tackles or breakthrough lines or get around the can first type of thing. And, what I would share with him is that you're loved no matter what. Because my competitiveness, my drive was it was a tool seeking love at the end of the day. And so, what I would say to him is that, you are loved no matter how well you go. Learn to use my center as the driving force, and you'll see that you don't need the anger to take you there, to take you to the top, or to take you into a better result, I would say.
So what age did you have the chronic fatigue start?
Yeah, so the chronic fatigue was around kind of, I'd say nearly 18, 19
Okay.
was when that hit.
Very interesting. Okay. Yeah. And when you came out of that, you know, you had a mentor and I've heard your story on other podcasts. Were you still that, I'll use the word aggressive, you know, fully focused, I'm going to win guy, or had that, was that the point where it started to mellow a little?
Yeah, it definitely mellowed. And yeah, it wasn't so much the aggressor as the driving force. And I'll regress a moment into, you know, before the chronic fatigue where I started to get the signs. And when I started triathlon at around 15, transitioning from surf lifesaving and rugby, what I found, you know, for a triathlon, it's a 1,500 metre swim for Olympic distance, 40k bike, and then a 10k run.
Yep.
And what I found was that if I was to use what I would think of as the NOS button, which is like the go button, which for me at that time was the frustration, which is like, go.
Right. That was your motivator. That was your source of power.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Frustration with?
Just, you know, not whether it's not winning or you know, at that stage, it was just an unconscious tool.
Right.
So it was like, I just knew to use it.
Just draw it. That was your
draw upon it.
Draw on the power.
Yeah. And so it was unconscious at that time, but, you know, it stemmed back as a child using it. But yeah, you know, I would try and use it at the back end of a triathlon in a 10k race. And with 4k to go, I'm at the 6k mark. I'd think, all right, let's go. And I'd hit the button and the aggression would kick in, the frustration, and I'd use it and I'd drive and I'd break everyone. I'd drop everyone. I'd be in the lead. And there were certain moments where I'd get to the 8 or 9k mark and I was totally spent because I'd spent all my chips. Yeah. And then, you know, someone might pass or, you know, I might come second or I might come third. And I'm like, whoa, this tool's not so much working for me anymore. I can't just use it. You know, I was a really fast runner. And I could break people really, you know, quite quickly, but it would hinder my endurance. And now that it wasn't working anymore, I had to try and pull back on that tool a little bit. And so I started to get the insight around it not working for me anymore. Whilst it worked in rugby, may have worked in short distance surf life saving and things like that, it wasn't working in an endurance type of way. And
at an elite level too. Like, you know, your competitors aren't just from your school, they're from all around the world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So something had to change. And then it's like the chronic fatigue hit.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. Very interesting. Cool. All right. I've heard you mention that you, on a trip a few years ago, that Wim Hof, when he visited Australia, you wandered around a bit with him, you know, following him around. Can you tell us about that adventure?
Yeah. So at the time, really early days, I think Wim hadn't yet created his program, but it was the first year he'd come to Australia.
What year was it?
It might have been maybe 13 or 14, 2013
right, okay.
or 14.
Yeah.
Maybe even 15. And yeah, just before he was coming out, at this time I was living in Palm Beach. And every morning I would go down the beach, and before I would train, I might go through a little bit of meditation. And there was always this guy maybe 50 meters up the beach from me, and he's there doing this
All right.
type of breathing.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is that guy doing? I'm here calm, going into meditation, and he's over there huffing and puffing really hard. And I would see him all the time. And so naturally we merged, and he was just telling me about this breathing and this Wim Hof guy that he'd heard about. And he said, hey, how about you come down here on Friday morning and we'll do it together. And I remember doing it and having this, very kind of spiritual experience with the breathing, quite transcendental and kind of taking me somewhere. And I was come out of that Friday morning like, what was that?
Yeah.
And yeah, it just so happened that, a few months later, Wim was coming, and he was a close contact with Wim. He was a psychologist and was helping Wim come out to Australia. And so he said, how about you come and help out, and you just support the event. And you kind of get the experience there. But, you've done the breathing, and we'll keep doing the breathing. So how about you come and support Wim? And so Wim came out, and I was just a support piece, and
cool.
Helping him, and got to sit and hear him. Feel his energy and hear what he's all about. And from there, just supported some of the events when he would come out.
Cool.
And met with his family members, and whilst he was here, was taken through more of the transformational breathing in more of an intimate group, and really kicked off that journey for me as well.
Yeah. I know my son went to see him on the Gold Coast here, like somewhere between 2017, 2019, I'm not sure. He came out, one Saturday. My son's constantly saying, Dad, you have to come. But you got to realise I just moved back from living 600 kilometres north of the equator for 12 to 15 years, somewhere there, with a scuba dive business, at 28 degree water, or 82 Fahrenheit for the Americans listening in, all year round, even down at 40 metres. So I love warm water. And my son's talking about getting in an ice bath. And I'm like, there's no possible way in the world I'm going there. So he went and did it all, loved it. And he said, Dad, he's very serious. The next time Wim comes, you are coming with me no matter what. That was the one and only reason I was happy COVID hit, because it stopped Wim from coming, and I didn't have to go through it. But then now, fortunately, if he comes now, and I'm actually 8 weeks into his 10-week online video fundamentals course. And so I'm sort of doing all the stuff, and the 5-minute straight cold showers, and then the cold immersions and that sort of stuff. So it's like, okay, I've got over that hurdle now, easy.
Yes.
And the breathing is really cool. So talking about that, I heard you talk about these sort of things. So I figure I've just been too lazy to study this little bit of it that I don't understand a whole lot about. Let's talk about adrenaline for a minute. So with his breathing, he talks about the release of adrenaline. Can you explain why that's so beneficial to us to release it, and what happens there?
Yeah. So firstly, speaking to adrenaline, I like to think of it as our liquid gold.
As
liquid gold.
Okay. Yeah.
It
nice.
is our liquid gold.
Right.
It's supportive of our energy. Right? It's an endocrine organ, and being our liquid gold, we want to be really observant as to how we use it. It's like spending money. How are we going to spend our energy, basically? And what are we going to spend it on? And what are the moments that it needs to be thriving within us, to be taking action and doing what we need to be doing in life, or working towards our goals, or training? And when do we need to let it relax, dissipate, and allow the other hormones and chemicals to move through the body to step more into rejuvenation, parasympathetic state, rest and digest, relaxation, or the yin side of things. So it's important that there is a balance within it. But when it comes to the breathing, especially the Wim Hof style of breath, it is really activating more of that sympathetic side of the nervous system. And so it's stimulating adrenaline, and it's moving it through the body, and moving it through to the brain as well. And as it activates and moves through, it's stimulating the body, stimulating, supporting oxygen moving into the cells, into the muscle tissue. And with the breath, you're really oxygenating cells. A lot of Wim's studies show that the oxygenation levels of the cells stay in the body for the next 3 hours after you've done the breath work.
Right.
So it just alivens us, and as adrenaline moves through the body, it can bring focus to us as well. It supports in shifting brainwave states into more of that focused way of thinking or being.
Okay, so just sorry to interrupt you there. You're talking about brainwave states. So we're in, normal waking state, we're in beta, then we go into alpha and theta and gamma. So with the adrenaline release, what state do we go into alpha or?
Yeah, we go more into that alpha brainwave state. Depending on its release, it can be more or higher frequencies as well.
So would that help you then, if you release that, help you to operate in those higher brainwave states in your normal waking day rather than in a meditative state? Yeah,
well, it's when we think of our day-to-day, if we can move into that balanced brainwave state, if we can move into the alpha where we can be focused yet relaxed, it's kind of this blend. It depends on what's being called of us too. But yeah, it can support in shifting that as well if we're really flooding it through the breath work. It was an incredible tool for me pre-race. So from this, I would utilize it and go, okay, let's use this breath before I get in, dive in for a 1,500 metre swim.
So the 3 legs, that takes on average how long roughly to complete?
Around 2 hours.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm flooded with oxygen.
Yeah. So are you still going to be really flooded for 3 hours though, considering the oxygen you're using?
That changes.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah.
Totally, because I'm utilising it.
Yeah.
But if we were to go on to our general day-to-day,
at
three
normal
hours
pace, you might get 10 minutes of it.
Yeah. Use it up pretty quick, but those first 10 minutes of a race are pretty important.
Oh, no. So, it's probably not quite advantageous enough to stop between legs and start breathing again.
No.
Yeah. Now, I know with these fundamentals, where he starts talking about doing the breathing and then doing push-ups so you're doing the breathing, fully exhale, do not breathe again, and you drop and you do double, triple the amount of push-ups that you would normally be able to do without breathing. And you're not even holding breath in, you're fully exhaled because there's so much oxygen in there. It's crazy.
It's incredible.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, like I'm not much of an exerciser. But since I've been doing this fundamentals course, I've been doing the push-ups, and it's just like crazy how many I now can do to what I couldn't do before. And just the motivation level's sort of very different now with much greater results a lot quicker through doing it that way. And so now I'm actually doing push-ups without doing the breathing as well. Just to keep the muscles active and stuff. It's
it's a powerful tool.
It is really.
Breath. Wim's done such an incredible job at really opening up this whole understanding of the many facets of breathing too. Whilst that one's a little bit more sympathetic, it's opened up to other elements and more parasympathetic style of breath work and breathing. And just the understanding of breath has really opened up via what Wim has brought to the world.
Yeah, it's incredible what one person can do, and I think when he first came to Australia, he was probably a little bit ahead of his time. But I know when my son went to see him, there was only probably 24 people turned up.
Yeah,
whereas now, like 5-6 years later, on the Gold Coast here, what have we got? A population of 750,000 people, something like that.
Yeah,
I'd imagine there'd be standing room only. There'd be a serious amount of people if you came for one day. It'd be full on. Yeah.
Yes, totally.
All right. So doing all these activities, I find, for me, it helps improve my intuition, and that's the basis for my podcast now. It's helping men in particular develop their intuition. So I've heard you talk about intuition being a thing in your life. So when did you first start to notice it being real in your life, and what triggered that for you?
Yeah. I think, intuition it's ever present. And, my first conscious awareness of it, I would say that it was with me, through very young years as well. But in terms of labeling it, bringing a word to it, and understanding to it, it really began for me during the time of being wiped out and in chronic fatigue.
Right.
During that time, I was shared a book, The 7 Spiritual Laws to Success by Deepak Chopra. And I also had the mentor at the time, as you're aware of. And what I had to move through, it was like I had to move through certain layers of my mind and uncover the intuition that had always been there. And, to me, intuition is from the heart. And to get to the heart, to access that, there needed to be this unfolding and delayering of my mind. And so, around that time is when I started to use more into my intuition and feel into that, this coach isn't necessarily right for me. It was really a process of starting to make my own decisions in life as well. Maybe this race isn't right for me. I want to do this, I want to pursue that. And I think that time was so pivotal for the uncovering of my intuition.
Very interesting, very interesting. Do you mind me asking how your intuition comes through for you? For example, we've got the terms which some people think are a bit out there: clairvoyance, clairsentience, claircognizance, clairaudience, which just is French, clairvoyance, French for clear vision. So do you have visions? Do you physically feel things? Do you just have knowings? Do you have inner hearing?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And for me, it encompasses all, but the strongest one for me is the knowing. And that knowing that drops in is the most alive feeling for me. I work in and also have strong visions as well. But coupled with the vision and the knowing, I feel is my personal connection at this point. But I'm watching, all of them grow as I progress and deepen my intuitive practice.
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, for me, it's pretty much the knowing, because my boys will say to me, Dad, how did you know that? You know, and I just go like, you know, where did you read that? Where did you hear that? Like, I've never heard that before. And I'm like, I just know it.
Yeah.
It's just, there wasn't a light bulb moment. It was just boom. Or sometimes I'll be interviewing someone or coaching someone or just talking to someone, and I'll just come up with a bizarre analogy and they'll go, oh, that makes so much sense now. Like, where did you hear that? And I'm like, it just came out of my mouth. Like, I don't know. And sometimes I can't even remember it later on. It just, there's just these knowings, these things come out.
Amazing.
And then for me too, it's the clairsentience. I have physical feelings at times. It's not a lot, but that's probably the next one for me. I'm curious, what are some of your biggest fears? Do you have any?
Yes, well, yeah, I mean, they're in there for sure. But yeah, when I mentioned before that this journey has been this archetypal process of development, it's also been this process of letting go certain fears. And one of them specifically is this idea of being abandoned, basically. And what I mean by that is that, you know, I've watched myself and still do watch where, you know, I may fear people judging me or taking their love away from me. And, you know, if people take their love away from me, then, you know, I can be abandoned or feel that. So that's something that sits in my unconscious mind and comes to my conscious awareness occasionally. So yeah, I'd say that is probably one that is here to constantly work on. And I know consciously, because I can see that, you know, I can't be abandoned, that's an illusion. Whilst people might take their love away, the only way that I can be abandoned is if I abandon myself in that moment. And, you know, that's my repetition and embedding that into not only my mind, but my heart through repetition. And it might present itself and someone's taken their love away or, you know, told me, you know, something or just, you know, not speaking to me about something. And it's like, oh, what? And then it's like, oh, hang on a second, a moment to sit and practice being in my center and, you know, not abandon myself during this time. So yeah, I'd say that's one of my deepest fears.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. What about, you talked earlier about using frustration. So how do you, like now, like I'm just going to spitball something. Pretend 2 months ago, you're getting ready to open the business and something's happened. You got a phone call or an email, you know, a tradie can't turn up, a supplier promised to supply this and now it's going to be delayed a month or two. So we get frustrations. And you said, you know, as a teen and as a child, frustrations were high on the list.
Yeah.
How do you deal with life's frustrations?
Yeah, I mean, I just have, I've developed this unwavering faith these days. And, you know, so many, you know, if you're using 2 months ago as an example, so many things could have, you know, infiltrated my field and you know, got in there to aggravate. And, yeah, this trust, this faith in myself and in the journey, in the process and the universe delivering and co-creating with it and working with it is really what supports me in that. And I've got a classic example when it comes to 2 months ago. If you walk into our studio now, you'll see these individual green mats. They're actually jiu-jitsu mats, but we use them for each person that comes into a class, and we use them for our one-on-one clients as well. And the original vision for upstairs in the studio was that these green mats would cover the area next to the window, kind of one section, and that we would have that whole area matted and, you know, connected, and it just would be these soft mats. And anyway, when the mats were delivered and we looked at the curvature of the window upstairs, we found that we'd have to cut these and jigsaw them in. And it was also 3 days before we were opening. And it was like, oh, wow, okay, this isn't going to happen to my original plan and my original vision. And I sat there scratching my head. I called my jiu-jitsu sensei, Paulo, and I said, can you come and help me? I know you've cut a lot of mats. Can you just come and help me figure this out and how we're going to do this and how we're going to do it fast? And he mentioned, yeah, you'll be cutting, but you're probably going to be here, you know, all 24 hours today and 24 hours tomorrow to do so. And I thought, okay, I just need to let this go. I need to just let it go. And through the process of surrendering that wasn't going to happen, we set out these mats as if it was going to be a class. And we set it out as if there was going to be 20 people there. And we lined up these mats individually, but with these gaps, and so that everyone would have their own mat to lie on. And the floor just looked stunning. And it just looked incredible. And we were like, problem solved.
It was planned that way.
It was planned that way. We don't need to put these in this part. And they were never meant to go there. And that, to me, I think of it as divine will. It's the will of the divine stepping in and showing that it's far greater than my will, my free will of the vision that I wanted. And my constant lesson is, surrendering to divine will. And letting go. Frustration can only be there if I'm stuck in my free will about something, versus being able to let go and step into the divine will of what can be far greater if I surrender to it.
Because I find it like if you do get stuck in that frustration, it's almost like you're creating a static, and you're putting up this invisible static wall. And the universe is on the other side of it, trying to help. But in those moments where we're able to have faith, have that inner knowing, just because I know when we built our scuba resort overseas, I was in my late 20s when we were doing that. And I was too young and naive to realise how hard it was. And, we had a huge amount, like over a 2-year period. And I was working at it full on the whole time. There was so many obstacles, but I never batted an eyelid. I just would send another fax, send an email, make a phone call, and just talk to the people I'd engaged. And what are we going to do? What are we going to do? These people saying that, what are we going to do? And just be the middleman, the negotiator, and just literally too naive to realise how big it was a big problem. So often I didn't put up those walls of static. Sometimes, obviously, I did. But, and just out of naivety, I didn't, it was just like it was a burn inside. And we're just going to do this thing. It's happening. And
amazing.
And
it's such an important trait. I think of that as the resilient survivor, which is the inner voice of just find a way. Just find a way. And to me, there's always a way. And we're always being supported to search for the higher potential way. What's the higher potential way? If this way is not working, there's a higher potential way out there. And what is it? And how do I find it? Well, I'm only going to find something that is higher potential from my center not going to find a higher potential way whilst I'm in my frustration. That's only going to form a lower potential.
Exactly.
So, the frustration's so distant to me now because I see how limiting it is.
Yeah.
And that as a tool, it's can only take me this far.
Yeah.
But sitting in my center and finding a higher way, it's infinite. There's no cap to how that can unfold.
Yeah. It had some advantage when you were a child and a teenager. You could use it as a button to drive you, to physically move you into action. But now you've grown way beyond that. Yeah. And so, I mean, on a basic level, it's reacting and responding.
Yeah.
You now can take it in and respond in a logical sense. Sometimes it's not even logical. We get our intuition. It's telling us to do this or that. And those around us can go, are you kidding? You're going to do that?
Yeah.
And we've got clarity of mind. The static's dropped, and we're allowing synchronicities in the universe to bring it through. Nice. I've heard you talk about the ideal flow state. And I was driving in the car listening to you say that on a podcast, and I had to quickly pull over and jot that down because I thought, I want to talk to Taylor about that. And I want you to explain that to the listeners, this flow state, and you've got this scale between 1 and 10. And when you've finished explaining it, what number do you think intuition comes in there? So
Great. I love that question. Beautiful. So this ideal performance state is a number between 0 and 10, and 0 would be you feel like you're about to fall asleep, and 10 would be you're so jacked and you're so in that higher brainwave state.
Had 8 coffees and
you're going crazy. And it's all relative too. Like, what is your 10 and what is your 0? But it's our ability to choose a number that we feel best when we perform. So, for example, if we're sitting here, we're wanting to perform, and where our minds are on and hearts are open. If we were sitting here at a 10 out of 10, I wouldn't be able to speak at this level. But a 10 out of 10 might be necessary at the start line of a certain race. I might need to lift myself to that number. And it's this idea that where are we most efficient? Where can we create the most efficiency where we don't spend too much, that we leak energy, and not enough that we don't get stuff done either? And finding that perfect number relative to the task at hand helps us to understand if we need to lift or if we need to drop. So, right now I want to be sitting at around a 3 or a 4 as I talk with you. And so if I'm catching myself, if I, and not that it was, but, if I came in and felt nervous and I was sitting at an 8 out of 10, then I'd have to think of certain tools that can help me to drop to get closer towards that 4. Maybe breathing or nasal breathing, long, slow and deep, can help to drop my nervous system to move that number down. But if I came in here and maybe I was a 1 out of 10, and I knew that 4 was really important for me to move to, then I would need to lift maybe some more sympathetic type of breath work, or I might play some music that is more stimulating and upbeat to lift that state for me.
The frequency of the music
can lift,
change your frequency, raise it.
Change that state. Yeah, exactly. Or I might step into visualization to lift the number. You know, visualizing how I want to talk to you and how I want to present or share an idea, and, you know, visualize myself in that to lift that state, to move it to a 4. So, yeah, whilst the example here is speaking, there's many other tasks we do throughout the day. And we have to find, you know, what that number is for us that enables us at the end of the day to walk home, for me to walk through the doors to see my kids and have the energy to be excited and play with them and, you know, give Steph a kiss and support her in cooking dinner and looking after them and things like that. Because if I was at work and said my ideal performance state with my clients is an 8 out of 10 and I'm going to be that from 8 through to 5 o'clock, and then I get home and I'm walking into the kids and I'm like, oh, I'm so spent, you know, I've got no energy left to give. Well, I need to check in on what my state was throughout the day. And I need to sit there and go, okay, 8's not my number. I need to move that back a little bit so I can sustain and endure.
So you've got something in reserve for the other activity. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Yeah. Very interesting.
So, yeah, just planning, you know, having the vision of how I want to be and then planning it too. Like, yeah, when are the times that I can lift to the 8 or 9 out of 10? But if I'm going to do that, where have I positioned my day where I can move down to a 3 or a 4 so that I can balance my liquid gold, my adrenaline, balance my nervous system throughout the day.
And so if we are at an 8 for too long, it's probably quite helpful to bring ourselves down to 3 or 4 for some time through visualization, breath, etc., or meditation or whatever. So what number would you go to for a normal average meditation?
An average meditation?
If there is such thing as average. But,
it's a low number. You know, I'm closer to 1 or 2 for sure. Yeah. And so, you know, that the beautiful addition to your question around where does intuition come in? It's a low number because in the higher states, more of the brain, more of the mental is involved if I'm in a higher number. But that has to move to the side. Self-reliance
up there, where like this is me. This is my ability. I'm going into this sales meeting. I'm going to sell these people.
And look, it's always there. It's there from 0 to 10 in my mind. And you can be incredibly intuitive in a strong sales meeting when you're sitting at an 8 out of 10. You know, that can enter. But if I'm really trying to step into the intuitive guidance and I'm there to step into the deeper parts of me, to work on my intuition, my connection, my higher self, then I need to be down at that 1 or 2. And then it's like receiving that guidance or that intuitive feeling, writing it, and then taking action on it throughout the day or within time. So, that's one part of it. But yeah, as I said, it is in all. And, you know, I mean, there's parts of my intuition stepping in now, and, you know, I'm talking about the 4 out of 10, and there's definitely, you know, if I'm bombing down a hill on a bike and I'm at an 8 or 9 out of 10, you know, intuition needs to come into play when I come to this corner that I've never taken before, and, you know, I need to glide out of it really well. Intuition's alive there as well.
Yes.
So, just using it in different ways.
Cool. All right, changing tacks a little. Do you feel you chose to be on Earth at this time in history for any particular reason?
Yeah, totally. Definitely. I've got what I call a soul contract to be here. And we are in this very exciting and pivotal moment of moving into, you know, higher dimensional way of being, basically. And so we're all here as souls to support each other in that ascension process into higher ways of thinking and just being. So
I'm curious, when did you realise that? Was it gradual, or did you have a light bulb moment?
Oh, I feel like I've had that as a small kid. You know,
Right.
as a kid, I've remember having certain dreams, with things coming to me and these moments of kind of understanding the construct that we exist in, and beyond that and outside of that as well, and seeing the multi layers of this life that we live in. It's what one of the most recent Nobel Prize winners has been able to now scientifically share, that we live in a reality that is based upon our observation. And these, not that I could say that as a kid, but experiences and feelings that I had as a kid, of seeing more than just this third dimensional reality or materialistic reality, when it comes back into the visions and clairsentience and the knowing and things like that. I feel like they've been with me for some time.
I actually just stirred something in me. I remember laying on the back porch of our house when I was about 5, looking up to the sky, contemplating things, and having the thought, which lines up now with quantum physics to a degree, when nobody is in a place, is anything there? And I'm like, as a 5-year-old, I had those thoughts. And
it's now true. Quantum science says that if you're not observing it, if the observer doesn't exist, or either does what you're not looking at.
Yes, exactly. All right, so I've got one last question for you. If we connected your microphone to all 8 billion people on the planet, and they were all listening to you right now, and you knew they would not blame, shame, or judge you for anything you said, what would you say to them?
What a great question.
And think about it, because it's a big deep, you didn't get this one up front. You didn't know you were going to get hit with that. I would say that you are more loved than you could even think about, than you can even comprehend, than you can even feel, and that exists within you and not outside of you. And so I would share that, go on the journey of finding that inside, and stop searching outside of you for it. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we are all loved, and we're all more than enough. Yeah. All right. So is there anything else that you'd like to share with us, or tell people how they can connect with you, or?
Native State is now open. You'll definitely find me there.
And it's down on it's overlooking the beach.
It's overlooking the beach at Kira.
Kira, which for those of you who are surfers around the world listening, you've heard of Kira, and it's right there.
Yeah. So, and if you're listening and got any questions, obviously asking yourself or hitting me up through social media, at Taylor Cecil or at Your Native State.
Yeah, and I'll have those in the show notes. People can click on links there.
Yeah, but I love connecting. You know, I love if you know, questions, and I love just speaking to people. I love voice noting. So yeah, I would love to connect with whoever's gotten to this point in you know, our discussion. And yeah.
Excellent. All right. Thank you for your time. We're going to let you get home to your children. Before, as you've probably been watching, it's been getting dark outside as we've been talking here, and it's time for Taylor to go see his family before they go to bed. Thanks, mate.
Thank you.
Well, we're at the end of another thought-provoking episode. Remember to subscribe so you'll be alerted to new episodes. I want to say thank you to the men who are joining me on this journey of intuitive development. I truly hope our time together has expanded your reality and reinforced trust in your ever-reliable gut feeling. Embrace your intuition. It will not lead you astray. Until next time, stay tuned, stay curious, and trust your gut.